In the heart of a dying alien empire stood a throne unlike any other, carved from black stone that shimmered with veins of blue and green light. It was said to be built by hands older than time itself. No one knew who created it, but all knew one. Rule the throne chose the true ruler. Only those worthy could sit upon it yet, for decades. Every heir who dared to claim it had been thrown aside in pain and shame. Some were burned by unseen fire, others were broken by violent bursts of energy. The empire, once mighty, now stood on the edge of collapse. Whispers spread through crowded markets and dark corridors of cities. The throne was cursed, the gods had turned against their people, or perhaps worse, the throne was waiting for someone not of their kind. The alien High Council gathered in a hall that stretched like an endless cave, its ceilings hung with glowing crystals, its walls echoing with the silence of fear. One by one they watched as chosen heirs, sons and daughters of noble blood, stepped forward and placed themselves upon the throne, and one by one they were rejected. Their screams filled the chamber, their bodies, hurled to the ground lifeless or scarred. The throne pulsed with light as if mocking the desperation of its seekers. The council grew restless. Some demanded the throne be destroyed, but none had the courage to strike it, for legends warned that even touching it in anger would invite eternal darkness. The throne had become more than a seat of power. It was now a cruel judge, a reminder that no one was worthy among them. Outside the chamber, the empire was falling. Planets once loyal now rose in rebellion. Trade routes collapsed, warships rusted in empty docks, the people lost faith in their leaders, and the throne became the symbol of their failure. And yet the council could not give up, for without the throne there was no ruler, and without a ruler there was no empire. In their desperation, they searched for answers. Priests performed endless rituals. Scientists studied its strange energy. Warriors sacrificed their lives in trial. But the result was always the same: rejection. Then one day an idea, born not of wisdom but of cruelty, echoed in the hall. What if we try an outsider, not a prince, not a general, not even one of our blood, but a prisoner, something unworthy, a thing so low that the throne will reveal its true? Will the idea spread like poison until it reached the ears of the High Council deep beneath the palace in the darkest prison? They dragged forward a human, a broken man captured years ago. In a forgotten battle, his chains rattled as he stumbled into the light, his clothes torn, his body weak from years of torment. His eyes, however, still burned with a quiet fire. The council laughed. Some spat at him, others mocked him, calling him nothing less than dirt. Yet when he stepped closer to the throne, a strange thing happened. The air grew heavy, the lights across the stone began to tremble. A faint glow ran through the veins of the throne, a glow that had not appeared for centuries. The hall fell silent. The laughter died, fear replaced mockery as the council watched the impossible unfold. Some screamed to stop it, to send the human back to the cells, but others, frozen by wonder, whispered that perhaps the throne had been waiting for this moment all along. The human looked up, his breath shallow, his heart racing. He did not know why the alien throne called to him, but he could feel it pulling him closer. Every step echoed like thunder across the vast chamber. The guards hesitated, their weapons shaking in their hands as if the throne itself warned them not to interfere. The prisoners stopped at the foot of the great black stone. The light of the throne now burned brighter, casting long shadows across the walls. The silence was unbearable. 1,000 alien eyes stared at the man they hated and feared. In that moment, the empire held its breath, and the throne pulsed as though it recognized him, as though it had been waiting not for kings, not for heirs, but for a human prisoner. The hall trembled as the glow from the alien throne wrapped the chamber in a strange light. The High Council stood frozen, torn between fear and disbelief. No one dared to move. No one dared to speak. The prisoner, a human from a distant world, stood chained and scarred, his eyes shifting from the glowing throne to the countless alien faces staring at him. He could feel their hatred pressing down on him like a heavyweight. Whispers rose among the counselors. Some claimed this was a trick, others believed it was a curse, yet none could deny what they saw. The throne responded to him. It had ignored every heir of noble blood, but now in the presence of a worthless prisoner it came alive. The council leader, a tall alien with skin like silver stone, raised his hand for silence. His voice, deep and trembling, echoed through the chamber. Perhaps the throne has chosen, he said, but many shouted back in anger, calling it blasphemy. They could not accept that their gods, their creators, their throne would choose a human instead of their own kind, the prisoner lowered his head. He did not understand why this was happening. He was no warrior, no noble, no savior. He was only a man who had lost everything, captured in battle, forgotten in chains. Tortured for years, yet something deep inside him stirred as he looked at the throne, like a memory half buried, like a voice calling out from his dreams for years. He had seen strange visions. When he closed his eyes, he saw stars that did not belong to the galaxy. He knew he heard whispers and languages he could not understand, yet somehow felt familiar now. Those whispers grew louder, filling his skull like a storm. The council argued violently. Some demanded he be killed before he touched the throne. Others insisted he be forced to sit upon it. To prove the truth, a few fell to their knees, believing they had witnessed the beginning of prophecy. The prisoner's hands trembled against his chains. He did not want to sit. He did not want to die like all the others who had tried before him, but he also knew there was no escape. If he refused, they would torture him. If he obeyed, the throne might kill him. His heart pounded like drums inside. His chest guards approached, pushing him forward. The glow of the throne grew stronger with each step. The air hummed with power so heavy it pressed against his skin. One of the guards whispered in fear, begging to be released from duty. But the council ordered them to continue. The prisoner stumbled, his knees weak, his body scarred by years of punishment. He thought of the family. He had lost the world he would never see again. He thought of his years in darkness and how he had prayed for an end. Yet now the throne called to him as if it had been waiting for his arrival. He reached the steps leading up to the black stone seat. The glow now so bright it lit the entire hall, shadows twisting across the walls. The council fell silent again there, breath held, waiting for the impossible. The prisoner closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the whispers inside his head. And then he placed one hand on the throne. In an instant, the chamber shook with violent force. A blinding surge of light shot upward, striking the ceiling. Crystals shattered, thunder roared through the air. The guards were thrown back, their weapons scattered, the council shielded their eyes, but the prisoner remained, standing, his hand pressed against the stone. The throne did not reject him. Instead, it wrapped him in energy, tendrils of glowing light crawling across his skin. His chains broke apart, falling to the floor. His body lifted slightly above the ground. His eyes widened as visions exploded inside his mind. He saw ancient wars, burning skies, endless fleets of ships battling across galaxies. He saw a people not like the aliens before him, but taller, stronger, with eyes of fire, the creators, the true masters of the throne. He saw them vanish into the void, leaving behind this seat of power as a key to something greater. He gasped, his body shaking, but he did not fall. The throne pulsed in rhythm with his heart, and for the first time in centuries, it accepted a ruler. The council stared in horror. Some fell to their knees, others screamed in rage, but none dared to approach the prisoner. He lowered his hand, the glow fading slightly, but still alive, burning within him. He was no longer just a captive, he was now something more, and as he looked at the alien leaders trembling before him, he felt the weight of a question he could not yet answer. Why had the throne chosen him, a human, above all others? The chamber still shook with echoes of the throne's awakening, the air thick with the scent of burned stone and shattered crystal. The alien council had fallen into chaos. Some of them knelt before the glowing throne, whispering prayers as if the gods themselves had returned, while others shouted in fury, refusing to believe what their own eyes revealed. The prisoner stood in the center, his chains scattered, his body trembling with power. He did not understand the light of the throne still wrapped around him, flickering like a living flame that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. He felt energy racing through his veins, alien symbols flashing in his vision, words he could not speak, yet somehow understood. They poured into his mind, ancient knowledge, fragments of history, fragments of warnings. The prisoner gasped, trying to steady himself, but the visions would not stop. He saw the creators, tall beings of light and fire who had built the throne long before the alien empire existed. They ruled not with kindness, but with fear, commanding fleets that stretched across stars. The throne was their weapon, their crown, their key to binding empires. But the creators had vanished, leaving behind only whispers of prophecy. He saw images of the Aliens who now called themselves rulers, kneeling as slaves before those creators, their chains hidden by time and lies. He saw the collapse of that age, a promise that one day an outsider would sit upon the throne to awaken its true purpose. The prisoner staggered back, clutching his head, the visions fading but their meaning burning into his soul. The council leader with silver-stone skin stepped forward, his voice trembling in rage. "This cannot be the will of the throne," he cried. "No human. No outsider can rule us." The council split into two sides. Some shouted to kill the prisoner immediately before he could claim power. Others called for patience, fearing the wrath of the throne itself. As the argument grew louder, the prisoner looked. At his hands, the faint glow still running across his skin. He had no army, no voice, no freedom. Yet the throne had given him something none of these powerful beings possessed acceptance in. That moment he realized the throne had not chosen any of the noble heirs because it had never belonged to them. He was terrified of what this meant. He wanted nothing more than to run. Yet the throne had made him its vessel, and he knew he could never return to being just a forgotten captive. The guards hesitated, staring at him, their weapons shaking, unsure whether to strike or kneel. The prisoner felt the whispers inside his head grow louder, guiding him, showing him paths beyond the chamber, paths to temples buried beneath alien cities' secrets. Locked away in forgotten worlds, the throne was not only a seat of power, it was a door, and he was the key. The council leader roared enough. He raised his staff. His soldiers moved to attack, but the throne reacted before the prisoner could even raise a hand. A wave of energy blasted outward, knocking the guards across the floor without killing them. The throne was protecting him as if it had its own will. The council fell silent again. Fear gripping their hearts, the prisoner lowered his gaze, his voice quiet but filled with something new. "You cannot fight it," he whispered. "It chose me." None could deny his words, yet hatred still burned in their eyes. The silver-skinned leader pointed at him, his voice sharp as a blade. "Then prove it, sit upon the throne fully. Let it crown you, or die like the others." The prisoner's heart pounded. He had seen what happened to those who failed, but the whispers in his mind pressed him forward, calling him, commanding him. He stepped up to the black stone seat, his legs weak, his chest tight with fear. The light of the throne brightened, filling the hall like a second sun. The prisoner slowly sat upon it, expecting pain, expecting death. But instead, the energy flowed gently into him like water filling an empty vessel. His body shook but did not break his mind, flooded with voices both past and future. He saw stars falling. He saw machines with eyes of fire rising from the void. He saw war coming not to the alien empire, but to all life. The throne was not just a crown, it was a warning, and he had been chosen to carry it. The council gasped as the throne accepted him, its light forming a crown of fire. Above his head, the impossible had become real. A human prisoner sat upon the throne of ages, and survived, yet deep within the throne's voice whispered a truth that chilled him. "You are not the end, you are the beginning." The prisoner opened his eyes, his voice steady though fear coiled in his chest. "Something is coming," he said to the council. "Something greater than you or me, and the throne has chosen me to face it." The chamber had never felt so divided. Half of the council bowed their heads in silence, afraid of the power now seated upon the throne, while the other half trembled with fury, their pride broken, their authority crushed by the impossible sight of a human prisoner sitting where their noblest blood had failed. The prisoner sat stiffly on the black stone, his hands gripping the armrests as the glow of the throne pulsed around him. The visions still haunted his mind, flashes of fire-filled skies, ancient fleets, spreading terror, machines older than time, moving like shadows across the void. Each image left his chest heavy with dread, but the voices inside him were clear. The throne had not chosen him to rule for glory, it had chosen him to prepare for war. The silver-skinned council leader could no longer hide rage. His voice cracked through the silence like thunder. "This is no ruler, this is a lie," he screamed. "The throne tricks us. It has brought us shame and chaos. How can our people bow to a human? How can we obey?" The weakest among us, others rose to agree, calling the prisoner a fraud, calling him a curse. But then there were those who knelt, pressing their foreheads to the floor. They whispered that prophecy had spoken of an outsider. They whispered that the throne could never lie. Tension filled the vast hall as soldiers shifted uneasily, their weapons drawn but their hands shaking, torn between orders. And Fear the prisoner remained still, his eyes scanning the room. He did not want to be here. He had never asked for this, yet deep inside he knew he could not turn away. The throne's power had tied itself to his soul, and already he could feel its presence shaping him, bending him. He stood slowly, his voice soft, yet it carried through the hall like thunder. "You do not have to follow me," he said. "I am not your king, but the throne chose me, and I cannot change that." His words only fueled the fire of rebellion. The silver-skinned leader raised his hand and shouted, "Then you will die here." The soldiers hesitated, but at his command they surged forward, their armor clattering, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The prisoner's heart pounded. He had no weapon, no shield, only fear, but the throne reacted before he could move. Once more its light exploded outward, forming a barrier that flung the attackers back across the chamber. They hit the ground, their bodies smoking but alive. The crowd gasped, their hatred now mixed with awe. The prisoner's voice trembled, but his words cut through the chaos. "I did not choose this. The throne did. If you destroy me, you destroy yourselves." Some of the younger soldiers dropped to their knees there, faces pale. Others backed away, clutching their weapons as if they were useless sticks against a storm. But the council leader's rage only grew. He knew his power was slipping. He could not allow the empire to bend before a human. His eyes burned with madness as he swore, "The throne will not save you outside these walls. An army waits. Those loyal to me will rise against this mockery. You will burn in the fires of rebellion, and this empire will not bow to a slave." His words ignited the spark of war across the empire. Within hours, factions split. Some pledged loyalty to the human chosen by the throne, while others armed themselves to kill him before his rule could begin. Riots filled the streets. Battles erupted on distant worlds. Blood spilled among families once united under one crown. Civil war had begun. The prisoner walked the halls of the palace, his every step followed by guards who now called him master, though he did not believe. It was when he passed windows where the skies burned with rebellion. He felt the throne's whispers guiding him, showing him glimpses of places, hidden temples carved deep within mountains, secret vaults buried beneath alien oceans, visions of power, forgotten visions of weapons that could decide the war he did not want to fight. But the throne left him no choice. If he did nothing, both human and alien would fall. He gathered the few who believed in him, warriors, outcasts, even some former enemies, who now saw in him not weakness but destiny. Together they swore to protect him and the secret the throne carried, but deep within his heart, he knew the silver-skinned leader would not stop until lead. He destroyed him. The war was no longer only about power, it was about the truth of the throne. And the prophecy it guarded one night, as the prisoner stood alone before the throne, its light dim and calm. A new vision struck him harder than ever before. He saw beneath the capital world a vast chamber hidden beneath stone and fire, and inside it's something pulsing, something alive. The throne whispered again, its voice cold and heavy. "You are the key. Unlock what lies below." The prisoner clenched his fists, his eyes burning with fear and resolve. He now knew the throne was not a crown at all. It was a door, and the true test of his destiny waited beneath his feet. The vision of the chamber beneath the capital haunted the prisoner. Through every breath and every heartbeat, he could not escape it. Even when he tried to rest, the whispers of the throne called him deeper into its secret, showing him flickers of fire and stone corridors carved by hands far older than the alien empire he now sat above. Outside the palace, the war tore through the streets. Entire districts burned as soldiers loyal to the silver-skinned leader clashed with those who had bent their knees to the throne's new master. Families fled, ships exploded in orbit. The empire was breaking apart piece by piece, yet the prisoner felt his path had already been chosen. He gathered those who still trusted him, warriors who had sworn their loyalty not to his human blood, but to the throne that pulsed within him. Among them were outcasts, shamed nobles, scarred veterans, and even a priestess who claimed to have read the prophecy of the outsider long before he appeared. They followed him not because they believed in him, but because they feared the throne's will. Guided by visions, he descended into the depths. Beneath the palace, ancient doors groaned open at his touchstone walls, lit with strange symbols, the air heavy with power that had not stirred for ages. The further they walked, the more he felt the throne's voice filling his mind, until finally they entered a vast chamber hidden beneath the Empire's heart. What they saw silenced even the boldest of his followers. In the center lay a colossal structure alive with pulsing veins of light. It looked like a heart forged of stone and metal, each beat shaking the ground around them. Strange machines coiled around it, silent yet waiting. The prisoner stepped closer, and as his hand brushed the surface, visions flooded him once more. He saw the truth. The alien people who called themselves rulers were never chosen by the throne. They had been slaves long ago, shaped and bent by the creators who built this empire. Not for their glory, but for their obedience. The throne had been left behind as a lock, and he was the key. It had never belonged to the Silver-Skinned Council or their ancestors. It had been waiting for a mind that was not bound by their chains, a mind alien to their blood. He fell to his knees, shaking as the knowledge poured into him. The empire is a lie. Its history twisted to hide their slavery, and now the same creators, or what remained of them, were returning not as flesh, but as machines. Forged in endless void, an ancient fleet, long forgotten, was already moving across the stars to reclaim what they had built. He gasped out the words to his followers, the truth of their past and the shadow of their future. Some wept, others cursed, but none could deny the vision that burned inside his eyes. Above ground, the council leader rallied his armies, painting the human as a false prophet, claiming the throne had been corrupted by his touch. His words spread like wildfire, and for every ally the prisoner gained, 10 enemies rose against him. Soon the city itself became a battlefield. Fires burning across the skyline, ships falling from orbit as the empire devoured itself. Yet, even as civil war consumed their world, the true enemy drew nearer. Across the dark void, the ancient machines woke from their slumber, their forms like vast black serpents of metal with burning eyes of fire, their voices the chorus of hunger whispering to reclaim their throne. The prisoner stood at the edge of the chamber, his hand pressed against the pulsing core, his voice quiet but strong. If we do not face them together, none of us will survive. His words reached those who still doubted, and some began to see him not as a thief of power, but as the only hope they had. The throne's glow rose brighter, filling the underground temple until the very stone shook in its voice. It whispered into him once more, "They are coming, prepare yourself." The prisoner lifted his gaze, his fear heavy but his resolve stronger than ever. The throne had revealed the truth of their chains, the truth of their enemy now. It was no longer about ruling an empire. It was about saving every life in the galaxy, and to do that he would have to become something far greater than a human prisoner. The skies above the capital world burned with fire as war spread across every horizon. Fleets clashed in orbit, cities trembled beneath endless bombardment. Rivers of light poured across the night as weapons older than the empire itself were awakened. The prisoner, now bound to the throne, stood at the heart of it all, no longer chained, no longer nameless. The glow of the ancient seat pulsed within his chest, every beat of his heart tied to its endless power. Yet, even as the empire tore itself apart, he knew the true enemy had arrived. The first of the ancient machines emerged from the void, black serpentine giants of living metal, their eyes burning like suns, their voices echoing across the stars. They had returned to reclaim what was theirs. The throne was never meant for the aliens, never meant for any ruler, but only as a key. And now that it had been unlocked, the creators' fleet had come to claim it. The prisoner stood before his followers, the warriors who still believed, the priestess who whispered prophecy, the scarred veterans who had lost faith in their empire, yet found it again in him. His voice steady, though the weight of the galaxy pressed against him. "This war is not for a crown," he said. "It is for survival. You do not fight for me. You fight for all that lives." His words spread like fire, carried by the throne's power, echoing through the minds of those who doubted across the empire. Some who once cursed his name felt the whisper in their souls and chose to stand at his side as the machines descended. Their weapons tore through the fleets of the silver-skinned leader. Entire armadas crumbled before the burning gaze of the ancient enemy. The prisoner closed his eyes and listened to the throne's voice guiding him, visions of forgotten weapons hidden in the bones of alien worlds, buried under oceans, sealed within mountains. He stretched out his hand, and for the first time the throne obeyed not only his mind, But his will beams of light shot from the palace, striking distant worlds, unlocking vaults that had not opened for 1,000 ages. Its vast towers rose from oceans, cannons of impossible size cracked mountains in half-weapons, meant not for kings, but for war against the very machines now tearing through the stars. His allies watched in awe as ancient fire lit the skies, answering his call. Ships once powerless now burned with new energy their engines. Roaring with power unseen, the battle turned. But it was not enough. The machines were endless, their forms shifting and growing, their voices a chorus of hunger whispering to consume all that lived. The prisoner felt the throne demand more of him. It pressed into his soul, its voice like a blade. You must give yourself fully. You're a human, but you must become more. He trembled, his memories flashing before him, his family, his home, his chains. His years of suffering, all the pieces of the man he once was. He knew what the throne asked it would. Take from him what little remained of his humanity, bind him forever to its power. He stood before his people, his eyes glowing like stars, his voice heavy. I must give all of myself to end this, he said. If I fall, remember this fight was never mine. Alone it was yours. They cried out to stop him, but it was too late. He placed both hands on the throne. Light erupted brighter than suns. The chamber shook. The skies split open, his body lifted high, energy pouring from every vein, until the man who had once been a prisoner was gone. In his place stood something greater, not fully human, not fully alien, but a being woven of fire and light, crowned by the throne itself. With a single cry he unleashed the full force of the throne, ancient weapons. Across the galaxy ignited at once, beams of power striking the machines, tearing their endless forms apart, burning them into ash and silence. The battle raged for days, but under his command the tide turned. The machines fell one by one, until the void grew quiet, their fleet shattered, their hunger ended when it was over. The skies cleared, the fires dimmed, the prisoner descended from the throne, his form changed forever, his eyes no longer mortal, his voice no longer weak. The aliens who once despised him now knelt not from fear, but from truth they saw in him. Not a ruler by blood, but the one the throne had chosen. He looked across the silent hall, the weight of his sacrifice heavy. The throne whispered one final time, "You are the first. Others will come." He knew his journey was not an end, but a beginning. The galaxy had been saved, but at the cost of the man he once was. He was no longer a prisoner, no longer human. He was now the living bond between throne and people, the first outsider, ruler of an empire reborn. And as he gazed into the stars, he wondered how long before the throne would call for the next.